Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about telling stories with images. So I'm Daniel Norton, photographer up here in New York in this cold and windy fall day. And I make videos like this. This one's going to be kind of a technique video, but more philosophy, I think. We're doing a lot of philosophy lately, which I enjoy, just letting you guys have a glimpse into my very strange brain, I guess. But if you're interested in that kind of stuff, gear, video, stuff like that, go ahead and subscribe. This is probably going to be a short one, I think. I was just considering the other day, where if you are a, well, let's say a journalist, you're going to do documentary work, or let's say you're a filmmaker. This applies very heavily to filmmakers. You're generally creating your story by creating 3 shots, right? The wide, right, or establishing shot, right? And then a mid shot with more detail, and then a close shot. Like that's usually how we tell a story. And if you think about it like a wedding photographer, right, you might shoot you know, the scope of the entire ceremony. You might shoot the bride and groom, you know, kissing, let's say at the end, and you might shoot like a close-up shot of like their hands with the rings, right? Like that would well, that's very basic, and you know, but that's just an example. And then that kind of tells a story, right? Or you know, you could do it in different parts of the day, right? You could show like a wide shot of the church with nobody in it yet and just the decorations. You could show a mid shot of like them getting ready, and you could show, you know, close-up shots of like things still in boxes, like the bouquet sitting on a table. Like that's you're telling the story of before the wedding, right? Like, you know, or you can do it after, and you can see the things, you know. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and this is how we do it. And you'll see this a lot in filmmaking. I mean, that's pretty much a very staple filmmaking technique, right? They're going to establish what's going on. We who are shooting not documentary, not film, right? And we're trying to tell our story in one image, have a challenge here, right? One part of the challenge is to, one way to achieve this, right, is to just think of which one's the most important, right? If I'm trying to tell the story of the wedding, what shot really tells that story the most? If I just showed the hands with the rings, that doesn't say anything about the people, right? If I just show them kissing, maybe it depends on the framing, might not show the location well enough or whatever. So maybe that wide shot is really what establishes and says, oh, here's this story, right? There's a wedding, you know, this is the story they're winning. This is basically what you could do. You pick the one you think is best, right? It's never going to be as strong as the 3 together, right? But it is going to convey it on some level, right? But taking that a step back, because obviously if you're a wedding photographer, you should shoot more than one picture. So this is not for that. This is more for what I specialize in, basically, which is portraits and fashion. When we are shooting, this is especially true of fashion, when we are shooting a fashion editorial image, right, which is one we're trying to tell a story, right, or an advertorial sometimes, right, as I do, we need to create a moment, right, that tells a story in a certain sense, right? Now, if you're talking about, in this, depending on how deep into fashion philosophy you want to get, you know, I don't think I'm going to get that deep into fashion philosophy this one. If you guys want to deep dive into that, we can talk about that. You know, some people just shoot against plain paper, and you might say, well, how the heck is that even a story? Well, it can be, depending on the photographer. But even those things, though, usually when you're shooting a fashion editorial like that, usually they comprise multiple images, right? So let's talk more like an advertorial, where literally, which means basically it's an advertising shot, but it's done in an editorial fashion. So it's like not a shot of like the sweater, you know, folded nicely, and it's like, here's a sweater. It's like somebody wearing the sweater as they're like walking their dog down the street, you know, holding, you know, a steaming cup of cider in their hand, you know, as there's a bustling street fair going on behind that, where people are buying, you know, and selling, and you can see some cars going by, and maybe in some of the windows you see some holiday decorations, and you see how I just told a story there, right? This is the thing, right? The way that you tell a story in a single image is to include items in the shot that connect everything together. You're connecting the dots. What's happening here, right? This is clearly somebody who went to this fair to get the thing. You know, they've got this dog. they're walking their dog, right? So clearly it's their neighborhood, right? So it's very homey, right? There's something going on. It's probably some kind of a city or at least a large town where there's like, street fairs going on. You see some decorations. This basically, in the end, can tell us, okay, this is who wears this sweater, right? Who wears this sweater, right? Somebody who is this person that's living, this certain lifestyle. And if you are that, you want to be that person, right? You're going to buy that sweater, right? That's a very different story than the person wearing the sweater with the, we'll give them the same thing, a cup of coffee, standing on a porch, with a wide shot, of them looking out, and you see empty plains, and you can see some fences with some horses running in the background, and the sun is rising, and maybe you see, like, going down the street, a windy road, you see the dust coming up from an old Ford pickup truck. Right now, we've converted our story. Right now, who's wearing the sweater? It's very country. Does that mean that only people that live in that situation, which are very few of them, want that? No, of course not. That means that somebody who wants that. They could be a city person that would love to be in the country. Maybe they had that fantasy, right? They might want that sweater because it connects them to that, right? And this is the story, right? This is the story. How are we doing it? We're doing it with elements in the shot that tie things in. Which means that typically if you want, and this is not 100%, but typically if you want to tell a story with a single image, you're usually going to want to go a little bit on the wide side. Because if I put my f2.0 lens on my 100mm 2.0 lens on my camera, and I zoom right into just this much of the person, and I shoot wide open, it's just going to be a person standing there in a sweater. And it'll be pretty, but it won't have a story. Right? So even if, I'm not saying everything has to be in focus, in fact it probably shouldn't be. This is why, generally speaking, right, we, in the fashion industry, shoot with wider lenses, right? If you start really looking at fashion images, you will notice, especially the editorial type stuff, a lot of it is shot with wide lenses. Not super wides, but like 35s, 50s, which aren't really wide, they're normal, but 50s, 35s. These are common, 28 sometimes. I never really liked a 28, but I like a 21. 35 is like a huge lens, and I'll say end equivalent, because I mostly shot in medium format, where I was shooting with like an 80, which is like a 40-ish, depending on your system, so, whatever. The point being, wide-ish lenses. And the reason why we do that is because it allows you to get close enough to the subject to show the good detail and have them be big, and have that connection, which I've talked about before, but also show some space, some environment, right? And you'll notice this in filmmaking too. They generally, they're not to say they always shoot with wider lenses, but a lot of times, even in situations where they're close to somebody, they'll use a wider lens to show more of the information in the background, right? Because remember that when you can frame somebody however you want, right? This is where we talk about field of view, right? You can use a long lens to frame this. You can also use a wide lens to frame this, right? You can do whatever you like. And depending on where you stand is going to make a big difference in what's in focus and what's out of focus, and what you see, the distortion, as people like to call it, or the compression. All that matters, right? So I don't want to get too technical here, because although I think I said I was going to be a little technical, my point being here is that if you're trying to tell a story, now let's go more abstract for this last kind of example. Let's say that you're shooting a story, right? And you want to have a feel like, let's say it's a nightclub. I just talked about nightclubs in another video. I'll talk about this one. Let's say you want to have a feel of a nightclub or at a bar, let's say, right? You can create that kind of stuff with light and feeling and abstraction. You don't have to have 100 people dancing behind them, although you could do that, right? You could very easily use, colored gels on the walls. You could use, the person with the drink, have it be very abstracted. You can tell these different stories by having items in the shot that people connect to, right? That's really what it comes down to, right? We have in our minds, right? Most of us have never been, out to we'll call it the true country, where there's lots of space and there's horses and old pickup trucks, and maybe that doesn't even really exist, right? But it does in our mind, right? It's a place that we all kind of understand, because we've seen movies or we've read books or we've seen photos, right? It's a place. This magical city that somehow the streets are going and people are getting cider and there's street fairs going on. This is a place we all understand. Does it actually exist? Maybe on some level. But the idea is that this place is something people can connect to, and by using certain ideas and objects in our shots, we can create story. And we can do it with color. I mean, there's lots of different levels. I'm actually throwing it out the most basic way because it's most obvious. But, you know, you can do it with color. Having like really warm light on somebody, you know, versus really cool light tells a story, right? If I put somebody near a window and the light coming through the window on them is very cool, you immediately assume that it is nighttime because our minds are taught to think that, right? This is just how you can create emotion, right? There's a big difference between somebody standing, let's say, in a dress by a window at night, with you know, or somebody standing in a dress by a window during the day, right? And you could have warm light coming through. That'd be morning light, right? Having the light lower so that it cuts across and the shadow pattern makes a difference, right? When it's noon, the sun is high, so the shadows will be deep like this. If they're low and warm, that's either the morning or the evening. We know that, right? So we can use the position of our light, we can use the color of our light, we can use everything in the shot to help evoke things that come out subconsciously in our viewer. And this is what we're really tasked to do when we're creating a story with a single image. We need to think, what would be the situation where somebody, and I'm going back to fashion, but I'll go to food because I love to talk about food in these. What would be the situation somebody would be eating scrambled eggs and toast, right? Probably, I mean, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning is at a Denny's or something, but, you know, more or less, we would think in the morning, right? It's considered a breakfast food. So if you're going to shoot toast and scrambled eggs, you're going to light it with a bit of a kind of a yellowy warm light, a little bit of a low angle on it. You're going to have it be kind of like have this light be like a little bit punchy, but like got a little bit of fill into it, because when the morning light comes, we start to, it's different than night, right? At night, when light comes through the window at night, there's harsh shadows. When light fills your house during the day, the room fills with light, right? So we'll have fill light in there. Maybe that light's a little bit cooler to kind of abstract the contrast, I should say, the warm light coming through the window, right? Because it's the morning. And this will help set our mood for our food. If we have scrambled eggs and we have toast, and then we have like purple and red and green gels like you'd have for a disco shot, that's just weird, right? And you could do that at such an extreme that it would really tell a different story. You'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? So again, those are going to make a difference, right? There's the stuff that we connect to, right? The stuff we expect. And then if you go away from that, it will create a jarring effect, which could be good. If you do nothing and you keep it neutral, it kind of falls flat, in my opinion. Then it's just some eggs and toast, right? Now I'm making myself hungry, but you know what I'm saying. I hope you know what I'm saying. If we want to evoke the story of breakfast, right, then we want to use light that evokes the story of breakfast. If we want to evoke the story of, you know, strangeness, then we'll use light that is strange. If we just use neutral light, what we evoke is nothing, right? And then we're not telling a story. And not every image has to tell a story, but if you can get to that level where your images do tell stories, that will elevate your work. So, there you go. That's my thought on that. What do you guys think about this? Do you use light to tell a story? Do you think about that? Or do you just look at things and go, what's the best way to light it to make it look pretty or show detail? Or do you actually think about how light would feel on this thing in the moment that the shot is supposedly taking place? Let me know how you guys do that, and all the wedding photographers, let me know how wrong I was about the different shots. I've shot a couple of weddings in my day, but I would not call myself a wedding photographer. You know, shout out to all the wedding photographers. That is hard work. And anyways, if you have not already, guys, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell to get all the notifications, and I'll see you next time.